맞아. 뭐 가래라 기억해랑 괜찮? 디 다이어켄 담셰 콘소 양기르 장삼나 디 password
하고
맞아.
더 큐랍이한테
그래. 뭔가 랍다 제소.
Okay.
기타나 말랍 소소.
니는 물랍 그래서 삼삼.
말랍 그래. 아니 페밍.
Gosh. 다 되니. 가테 데리 찻마십신 비남줄람나 로피 키오남 투지 투메 계조 총이람 린족 총기 건버신 남지 믹지람라 바바테나야 실랍샤메란트 돈히피 니킹언이 게위 좀바나 만도론우듬테 주퍼샤송 다 때리 다 오나 저리더니 단더니 ndeni maramba jende pe karchembo chi songre karrezena ta kong do shapartar to na tawa tendi kinyamlen thombola chat malipna di warto choni nyamsolen chur tedi zamola malip ko warto yagila la tawa o 톰볼랩 소나다 초니 종죽신인로 덮고요레스 서버레 옛나양 때라 말랩 거와도 초니 종죽 그 찹라고 때 초니 종죽 찬잇 빠직 만나양 띠고 초이한다고 즉 리동비니 감니 마직 요르웨제나 오다테 요레제니 데니 마른 밥진도 초니 종죽 린죽 셰츠르테 티티 송레 어드리
So now we're at the next paragraph on page 3, starting with the words practitioners training in the path of immersion and onward. And so then the Mipa Rinpoche continues to provide important points that we all need. And he says that then, for those of us who have not reached that level of the highest level of the view, in which we're able to unify on the ultimate level the two accumulations, until that point of profound practice and a highly evolved view in which the two accumulations are simultaneously present and unified in our practice. Until we arrive there, then is there a way for the rest of us, essentially beginners, to gather the two accumulations? What's the method for us? And so we might not be able to do the gathering of the two accumulations on that ultimate level that has been spoken of up until this point, where someone has a highly evolved view. But then what can we do? And so now Mipam Rinpoche sort of responds to that sort of inquiry. And that is that we can alternate between the two. Lasso?
디 다 공도 다당아 준데라만 로히오 파테 린죽 시츠르 그 디나라 야 냠림 칸 그런 박섬 송송 상거도 공거 가렉 송송 제나네 다 다탄데 나츠만 로진 바테 믹지 그 초당 믹믹 그 초니까 초니 린죽 셰니 롤룩데당 직 리타오 베니 갑라 데니 칸참 치라야 오트 역보 책송나 ngar kong to sha songa kong to teni ot yak po chek sona teni aming me kerni lu kong to gum jap jin to aming chip sonam ko chok tham jalan juk thap kres teni aming chip sonam ko chok tham chen juk jin to aming me kong lan ro thap kres ni ka tong chig na lambap thya yore zene kong to teni sha songa teni rinjuk shini di jilak nipa ta tele proin sare tangwo rinjuk shini teni nipa te teni rinjuk mergowa nikala nika changwa dawo chik tela le proin sare teni kansam chigla ko dana keo parwi yurli dibare songyate ta tele proin sare kansak parwi ta na yurli dize kankhar thamchet chokla kyurwa ta kankhar thamchet 나차 가레카나 차 참마다 피아와 가레피나 차 참마다 게와던 촉순기로비 둘갑지 카르크레스 따테 테니페 양톰볼렘로와데 텐디그 테니름 박삼름 기름 기송레 디나니 테니 땅아조 린죽고 쓰기 셰정데 테마샤기요레 따테 타우 테니 콘도샤 팔라름 박니샤 소아 테타우 차트 말레피 남저 따톤 람라로피 키고 khoena lamla lopi kiwzena yang de la niluk tokba yang ngo ndi wang to samlo tangna li tangwo pa ze te niluk tokba zokchen ke nyamlen top nyomken o tani tela kala kansam ke nyamlen shek yonken o tani keruk talane namjur lamla lopi kiwo nam zekiore te tawyenna tani namjur ke lamla lopi ta namjur mapchu pi lamla lopa zokchen ke nyamlen shenken ke lamla lop ke yonken rangrang sosu tani tar ngonro ngan to zok tani yang chik thana keram tang zorum yang rangrang sosu chik hi o tani zokchen la nyam slenni tela njungkang ka kangsa nam ki sogni nyam slen sur kare re zena ta rinjuk chi ne shi gu kres tu chi ge hwena kedum la ge kedum shina yang ra tani zorum ka nga chu starlong thigle ke nyamlen shina yang ra te cho tani zorum ze khiore 대비진도 아주 건접고 쇼스 똑비 개와 강당 강인나 파신 쪼그냠는 라 속바 데니 ялг 덤비 냠는 라 속비 셴사라와당 초반버와 라 속비 냠는 까리 시나양 탐첼라 제키오레 데니 테라 데 오래 뚜지 그냠len 당 뚜메 조름 그냠len 당나 드니 게와 잠바 템체 까리 옛나양 린죽 tum기 곰버시엔남 기스 다 가립시 구그레 저나 두냠 또 니까 역보 직 창완다고 직 냠냄시 터고 멘큰 그 강석 라 옛나 니까라 냠len 냠시 khyor라 니까 두냠 또 냠냄시 터고 메빠 존죽은 산잇 반다고 직 용터고 메나 teni otan teni dawo shegu kore songre. No, it's okay.
And so then we have the stages in which we can alternate, where we do each practice alternately. Essentially, we can look at it as being sort of like 3 stages. The first one is a beginner. Remember what the definition of beginner from yesterday is able to do non-referential accumulation of wisdom practice, and they're able to do the referential accumulation of merit practice, but they can't do them together yet, so they alternate between the two. And then there's a certain point where they become, a practitioner becomes fairly adept, and then they are able, as was mentioned before, to be practicing non-referential wisdom meditation and at the same time engage in other practices and of accumulations and so forth. And so they're able to do both, and they're mutually enhancing each other. And so that's the point where there's been a fair amount of development of both, and then each is enriching the other, as we also spoke about. And then there's the level of the very high level of realization, in which then simply the realization itself is perfecting or completing the 2 accumulations. And so at that point, then that's where this transcends being a perceived object in the perspectives of ordinary beings. So then I'm going to see if I can translate that better later. But it transcends being within the scope of ordinary mind, or what we could conceive of it as. And for that, level of realization that's transcended ordinary mind, at that point, whatever arises is simultaneously the gathering of accumulations. All of the apparent aspects, all activities, whatever they are and however they manifest, are the accumulation of merit, of virtue, and so forth. And so everything is just spontaneously sort of present or complete within that. And so that would be like the third level of practitioner. So here now we're looking at someone who needs to practice them separately. So we talk about alternating between the two until we arrive at the point in which we're able to do both non-referential and referential practice simultaneously. So here, beginner, when it says practitioners training in the path of immersion in genuine being, that's also the word yoga, then this means someone who has received the Dzogchen teachings and instructions and who has recognition of the nature of mind, of our Buddha nature, and is able to rest or practice with that. And so then they're able to have an immersion in genuine being and to do a practice session that's completely non-referential. So, but they're not yet able to do the referential accumulations simultaneously. So typically this would be a person who had done prior trainings, such as perhaps completed a Wundro, perhaps they trained in generation and completion stage practices, and so forth. And they reached a point where their mind was ripened enough that they have received Dzogchen instructions and had recognition and are actually able to practice that. And then at that point, at that beginning point of this approach, they would be alternating between the referential accumulation and non-referential accumulation. And so the referential accumulation would be the sort of elaboration of practices. They're called elaborate practices, meaning involving conceptual focus and so forth, such as the generation stage practices of the deity, or the completion stage practices like what are called Salung Tigle, where one uses the winds and energies and so forth. And so then also all the other trainings that would fall under the spectrum of referential, including like the 6 perfections and the 7 branches and prostrations and making offerings and all the other ways in which we train and practice and tame our mind. And so at this point, then the practitioner would alternate back and forth between training in the sort of stage of the elaborations, where there's engagement and referentiality, and then training in the unelaborate approach, which would be without referentiality. And they would alternate between the two, but weren't yet able to simultaneously do both of them. And so at that point, then the approach would be to alternate one after the other, because bringing them together simultaneously, something wouldn't be complete in terms of either the referential or the non-referential. And so until then alternating is necessary. Lasso?
Tere, teni ndinang la gerim tang zogram ni songore timre chiti tinigo samare sangdo. Trubchi tumet tang gerim trubchi tume gerim ore ndigan sare tan gerim tang zogram tat konde trubchi la trubchi de Trubadang Chipate Gerums Nazul Harkeya Dorma Jaya Teni Chigu Orolmo Mampo Denba 드립시니 하장 그 쭈바 첨보도 쪼라 망보시비 고니 드니 깨름치 바데 데세키오레 드니 쭈치 쭈메 깨족 속니람 깨름당 조름 맥지당 맥맥 속니 이제 어레다 쭈치당 쭈메 깨름당 조름 데니 속 맥지당 맥맥 그 속대 초제키오사레 따텔라네 아주 깨름직 곰나네 사직 곰나네 그때 코랑 낭차니 학직보 코랑 곰독나네 깨름세레 아주 tel라 때 어미지 그 속으래 회나 피아니즈직 곰나 디냠는 집시나 피아니즈직 굽곰코요 바다 ങ്ങൾക്ക് 라케요 바다 되니 저 대토가리레제나네 어미지 그 속세레 되니 깨름 그 하르코 곰바테 하르코 또니트 ngohiba 오텔라 테니 투메 제나한다 테니 텔라 미미크 초제레 팀 손닝 아주 개와 강드럽나요 코랑 회나 타파치케나요 티 타파당 녀르제 도마치케 소나 티 녀르제 코랑당 타파 코랑테 미치 소놈 그 초그레 옛나양 띵니 값소 타피 람진당 녀르제 그 람진 돈이 좋아 돈 담발라 티 ngohi khion나네 미메크 초제레 속니까 두직 남긴더니 빼마트비 가첨보 니렌더니까 속니 이제데 마추 중 회차지 그 로나양 디능랑 속니 그 랩히오레 대비진도 도 그냠len다 나 그냠len 강가나 있나 흥어와도 물름 그나 있나 가도 있나 속니 자직 랩용해오레 가르제나 코녜페 마트비 속니까데 탑기 차다 히럽기 차니까데 빼 가르침보임 비셔나 랩히오레 메트 모롱와리 에세레 되니까 야체총 가체시트고 라나소소라 락리르와 마토 무니샤나 람그 냠넨 콤페르튼 로와당 니캅당 타르투금 리우 토퍼체 팔라 속니 족바타 하장 가르침보요레스 속니가 조나는 또바 말에 속니 조나 또바 강긴 차르제키오레 더제나 가르제나는 속니가 조나 드파 강기 딱 놓고요레 드파 강기 딱 속나 또바 강긴 차리용고요레 어디셔나 때니 속니 글람 제데 딱버 용고요레 옛나양 때니 리 땅오바남기 어린족 좀기 검버시에 남기 제다 두냠도 곰 못파 칸 남기 단더스타르도 시난 르 송레 데리레스 믹지람람 바파 텐나양 데니레 시라샤메라 두출라잖아
Tanda kirim yube kabla wansuyang tongni yimba wansuyang gom gyab gedu dani di zogrim dang so mig kirang tanda songsonga so di in the tuchi gom gyab gimendwe
tuchi gomna rijuk gomna ticharesekyo 야 그런 티차도 곰톱이 원났다 더 맥지 더 맥메트 드리세요
So looking at this paragraphs, practitioners training in the path of immersion in genuine being who have not reached that level must meditate by alternating the generation stage with elaborations and the completion stage without elaborations, the path of the two accumulations. So, Rinpoche said a little explanation is necessary here. The generation stage with elaborations is referring, for example, to then deity practice, which has many elaborations. There's many aspects to it and ritual arts, and it includes, for example, not just visualizations, but supports like tormas and music and so forth. And there's a lot of effort into doing all the components of deity practice. And so oftentimes the generation stage is referred to as with elaborations. And then the completion stage is referred to as without elaborations, as it's more in the ultimate sense. Like, for example, Salung and Tigle are called, Salung is called a completion stage practice. But whatever the case is, there's then there's both of those practices, and when we're meditating on the generation stage of the deity, there's the apparent aspect, but at the same time, there's also the emptiness aspect, where we're recognizing the deity's empty nature. And that the apparent aspect would be the generation stage with elaborations, and recognizing the empty nature of the deity would be considered the completion stage without the elaborations. And so, for example, if you were doing Avalokiteshvara meditation, you're visualizing Avalokiteshvara's form, reciting the mantra, and you're holding all the key points of that practice. And all of that would be called the accumulation of merit with a reference point. It's referential. But at the same time, in the generation stage, one of the key points is to then recognize its empty nature. And so we would bring the wisdom of emptiness that we have to recognize the deity's empty nature, and that is a freedom from elaborations or unelaborate. And that would constitute the non-referential accumulation. And so here I as a translator, I'm just confused because we were talking about alternating, but now when you bring all the key points of deity practice together, they're both there. So I didn't get clarification from Rinpoche, so I'm just giving you the words. So you can sit with that. And so then Rinpoche said, when we are engaging in any kind, that's just an example, like of deity practice. But then when we have any other kind of cultivation of positive qualities that we're engaging in, which would be considered the accumulation that's referential, then we generate, for example, faith, or we generate compassion, and that would be called the merit that is referential, the accumulation of referential merit. But at the same time, if we recognize that the faith's nature is emptiness, and that compassion's nature is emptiness, that recognition of its emptiness is the non-referential accumulation of wisdom. And so then you would simultaneously have both accumulations. And so you see references throughout all the texts about the two accumulations. Whatever approach you're practicing, the sutras talk about the two accumulations, the tantras and secret Mantrayana talks about the two accumulations. And at all times, the two accumulations are mentioned because both are essential, and they're essential components to what we're incorporating into practice. And so the referential accumulation of merit is called the skillful method, and the non-referential accumulation is called wisdom. And both of these are indispensable to the path and practice, whichever at any given moment is stronger or more present for us in the practice is dependent upon the practitioner. But essentially, if we're looking for both the temporary and ultimate fruition of this path, then we must rely on the perfection of the two accumulations. They're both crucially important. And so you'll see mention, they'll say, if the two accumulations are perfected, they're being accumulated, then obscurations will naturally be purified. If obscurations are being purified or subsiding, then realization will naturally arise. And so, in this way, when we begin, then we can alternate between the two accumulations. What's up?
어tere mikchi lam bapi tenaya shilap shan merang ton hipi ngi ngani gewi tsomba na mandorang kete jupar sha soni ta kare ze kyore ze na mikchi lam bapi tenaya se gewa mikchi ke zowo nga chu deni zonzen nis mepi tsurki mikpa mepi tsurki chirtawa bjento nyamse lento ke menaya kane dabore zenana gewa konzupti gewa kang drabnaya ti zowo tani gewa korang la zowo migni tenkhiyore che tenaya yenaya tetang tu nyamto tawi nga to yakpon duk thop menaya tawi ngihi yojinto she thop khiyore che kare rezena tarta nyamnem che pirni kamna rang ko mikpatang chipi goni nyamnem che khiyore yenaya tani ngubu nilugla mikpat tham che tang tarwa yimba shap she liksam tham che tang tarwa yimbi ngihi kini tingani gumgu kre drabgu kre te zena kar ze khore zena khena rang gewa chik drabna katen di nikap tak zo ngoma nga chu tani nyama bi zochin ke nyamlem shakhiyo wa yenna yang tani terta u kangza chik nyamlem shepir ni kamna kerang ke shing char khayo nam chopa bur khayo na ngonrop sakhayo na lai nyamlem shekhayo na kare shekhayo pirni kaptela sem ke zo tani mikpa tang chipi goni nyamlem shekhayo re yenna yang tir ni kaptela Trambaka Niluk ngama ngotro dio pirang ke sem ki niluk tran vinto Trambi ngihi ngani drabgo kre se kyore ta titoni Huerna karte kerang ke sem ke niluk ngokhi mena kharchangi kerang sola juina tomba ni ki ton tran vinto ngomi ti ngalag ni thok mena ya tawa ti ngani ani thok mena ya toni kertawa tran vinto rang gewa drab gore chi pat te tran vinto te thop kre nga chu rang la ngama toni kertawa ti chi ngi pa ki yo na ti chi hako yo na ti ton te tran vinto nyamlen chi cher ti kap la zo mi chi la khuk gyap khore karte zoching ke tawa yang met toni ke ngom chot paya ngokhi paya menna ne kare gore zena ne kharsangi kondo juina gyama dar malam taw yeno sambi ti ngi pata ti tani tramba ka ngani gewa thamchet job gores gyama dar malam taw yen samya ka ngani ti tramba dawo mabjit pi ngani drupna li tampo pala tendikyo also de tate ni kap zonju ngoma marata zonju ngoma jima yagi la lap songa kale chini lep yong khore yena tampo nga chu gewa dripir ni kam nak mikchi ge gewa ming me ke ton chamba dawo ma to ko tawa yang tak pa chik ke thoglan duk thop ko yo mar mayo na yang deni nga chun dom ban dom bir ni kam na chan thop karawa Omana pame honre, seni ngak dombi ni kamnayang, teni chik gematang malam tawo chik chan vinto don tam kadwa. Chu tam chik gematang malam tawo yen, samyan dawo chik gonin don tam kadwa. O teze kyore, teni shin don nan dekayo ozere. Ta yen na teni mingmek tsoko go chot pandawo yongre ze, rokpa. Ta nime patang ragamare ezere. O teni ze kyore.
Now I know why they're saying alternating, because it isn't actually a true unifying, which we'll get to in a few moments. This is still considered alternation. So continuing, it says, even if a practitioner relies on the effortful path with referential objects, they should not abandon the certainty of knowing the meaning of fundamental nature, actionless and self-liberated, while diligently engaging in virtuous activities, combining them according to their capacity. So our main focus may still be the accumulation of merit with an object, referential. And we're not at the level of unifying, of incorporating both. And so it's called alternating. But it's not like a complete disconnection. So what that means is that then while we're engaging in the relative activities of referential virtue, merit, all the practices and trainings and positive activities that we do, which is called the accumulation of referential merit, at the same time, even though we may not be able to rest in the non-referential view at the level of Dzogchen, we can remember or bring to mind then the ultimate nature to some degree, depending on where our understanding is at this point. So if you're someone who has had a recognition of awareness, in Dzogchen, you remember that at that time. You're not actually in non-referentiality in it, but you remember it. Or if you've had instructions on emptiness extensive to the point where you fully understood it, you remember emptiness. So we're doing the other trainings of referential, of accumulation of merit with a reference point. And at the same time, then we can remember the ultimate meaning to whatever degree of wisdom we've generated at this point in our practice. For example, we can recognize that it is beyond a subject, object, and action. And still be fully engaged in that activity, and we can remember that while we're doing that activity. And so then here, we're primarily looking at it from the Nyingma perspective of the Dzogchen. And so then it has a kind of its own unique sort of approach if we're doing that practice or have those instructions already. But basically, when we're practicing in anything, which is not the non-referential view, that's called referential accumulation of merit, whether it's prostrating or making offerings or accumulating the Lundro or doing generation stage deity practice, or any of all the other number of trainings and practices that we do. All of those are the referential accumulation of merit. But at the same time, we can still remember the wisdom. And so we're incorporating that. It's just not called the unity yet, because that was already described what the actual unity was before. And so, yes, we don't want to just forget about the wisdom. So the alternating here doesn't mean you just forget about the wisdom. But if you've had a recognition of the natural state, then even though you might not be able to do the practice or the activity you're engaged in that actual non-referential wisdom, while doing that practice, you can remember that recognition. It's like a referential sort of remembrance in the middle of that practice or activity. Or if you've understood clearly emptiness, you can remember that empty nature and incorporate that with whatever the practice you're doing. And this is something that any of us can do. We can be immersed in a virtuous activity, practice of any kind, and then we can remember the empty nature as we're doing that, and there's no contradiction. And so the focus is still, we're in referentiality, we're in referential accumulation of merit, but we can bring to mind. If we are someone who has not yet had recognition of the nature of mind according to the Dzogchen approach, and also if we're someone who has not yet gained confidence in emptiness and determined what that is, then at the very least, and any of us can do this, we remember it's like a dream. It's like an illusion. So you can be engaged in the middle of that activity, a positive action or practice, and just remember it's illusion-like nature. It's illusory nature. It's dream-like nature. And that would be fine. So this isn't what we're calling unifying, the two accumulations in the literal sense, as was previously described. But we are incorporating the wisdom into the referential practices. And in the mind training, it has both of those as well. You remember? In the 7 key points of mind training, there's relative bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. And the ultimate bodhicitta, then we would refer to as being called the non-referential accumulation of wisdom, and the cultivation of relative bodhicitta, and all that entails would be the cultivation of referential merit, the accumulation of referential merit. And so, in this way, we can recall, we could say, the non-referential accumulation of wisdom in the midst of engaging in the referential accumulation of merit. And until we can truly unify the two in the way that is described in previous paragraphs, then we are working on both alternating and integrating them in this way. So for example, you can say the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, and you can recognize its empty nature, or you could think it's a dream or an illusion. You can bring that to mind. Anyone can think that while they're reciting mantras. And so essentially, even though it isn't in the truest sense of non-referential, we are incorporating the gathering of the non-referential accumulation of wisdom into, and it suffices as beginners, into all of our other trainings with referentiality. That's all?
Yeah. Then I think this is like when we doing play Damaru and the bell. And we need to, sometimes we do puja, all these three together is very hard. And then people learning these like one by one. But same time you know you have bell here too. And sometimes you cannot moving together very well, but you moving this as a more focus, your mind does focus this one more. Then this one still you not forget, it's here, you're holding here. So this you're doing this, and then sometimes you're doing this, and then you're not moving this. You know, the beginning when we do practice these two accumulations, it's similar like that. One and another. It's a little bit cannot come together. But slowly, when you're learning really Vajra, Bell and the Dhamaro, and then slowly there's don't need thinking even. When you're holding and they come, even more than you can read text and go together, everything, because you're familiar. So like that, and then she go crazy pitonde that don't let this on then make cheap sonum go so she pirni come not make it on the mabjit and they could do sorry. Tachso to go and do sorry. Nyambi Jaru don't let search the gombi to Nakana Churjaki, Kayalam of the roll we Yankee, Murgama to answer Ramjik Shah, only Tani Tawana. Make it on Yamnam Shipini come Nazi, Terry. Nyambi Jaru ton la Terchik the Zena, Ranik Tomba Nikaton Hihionanda, Yana Tani Semkir Niluk, Dershek Nyampo, tizi gom hiona ngo tizi hiona tingala virgin birni kapna when re tani nangwa te tak tamchette kari kharna when nga chu mik yur to zung thona nda nawi yur to dragona ni yur to church yur to rola sopa zudra tro raksha ka nawa kang kharna nda azere kari kharna yur ko when chotuk nawa kari kharna nda yana tani rang ka sem nangla tapa kharna nda yana tani namtok ndaman na chokpa mangpo kharna nda kerang gum gyapni tsek chik tani kerang ka thun chadni dango ka tangla ndugni gum gyap tang chachang shini tsek chik to nyamnem shepirni kamna khari hongre gorngi hibi yur chachang khari hongre tani yang namtok yang kete dongke orwa te kewi ni kaptela tani di kharchate tak tamchet tsawani ni margak sekore oya tani to pa margak o khari hongdo samni nga chu gember ka gum gyapirni kamna onga namtok khari hongdo sam tani khahi nga zung thongnan do pa mandok ngi drako nan do pa mando zegore yenna techo ta nyam to tsar jangore zekore dinala karrejena gagdrib mabshet pa korang kharna ya te margak te gaggona gag thabka marwa rewa yo mar khoena miklan la kerang mik tsam jignan yang nakpo jing thongdo kre nak dab che jing thongya ma to mom thongwa chi re mendwa thongya yore mik shena na katok kar ser mar jing yip na chok pan thongya yore kate kerang ga nawan dan jignan ta dong da chi yore u zen do kre wa trusa chi yo mar 루보라 락샤 메사 지경 주사 척해요 말. tendi ke yurlap tu dosa yo mar tip sherna khar yong wi ni kamna gerdep map sherang sala yogu ji pitonde. Khona kirang gum gyap ni kamna kari khar yong na teso margak ze gagna de kangya phantu yo mare nam to kare khar yona margak zere korang margak ona jisu mamjang zere yurk jisu yang mamjang nam to jisu yang mamjang zere gagba tang dripa mapshit kari gukhuyore zena kang kharna khar tup chukni rangwab kangang to ni mapshak kos sem map chupi ngala nilu kungala bjakko kare zere rani ke rugby ngowo hiyo na tingala ma bjakore dershek nyang pu ngoki patsam tingala bjakore ngoki ke mena yang when na tongni ngoki hiyo tingang to bjakna yang o te tawres te maza jirni gumna yang when na tongni maimpa langtong map gum par jirni kyangwa gumna yang yurte to khar yona gardum me pa bjriate gum ke na chikrete gomla sem tsechik to ni tepir na chikre o tendi shini ne merg mabdub se rangsar ramjik sha se korang rangsar ramjik ni rang so kharna gar magarna makhar teni bjik gokre ze nga cho khwechig yoro gambu ndont shipi tsemo tsewa ta bos gambu ndont shipi tsemo tsewa ta bos gingo chik zerla na pogu chong chik bjik yona tani pogi tsemo kare tsidugna tornang shita yo maris korang kare pogi titi zir tela metok tsekhe na tani dor tsekhe na yana tse chi mampo pesho tangni tsekhe na yang tani gingo tetsu pogi tela yo pa yang hako tsam yore te yenang tela tani kanyang gagdrib mabshet ni maa chewa bjik karwa pogi tetsu tseb chugni kozu kare che samna bjik yore onde namjin nawa kare kharna yang tani map chupar semrang wab jekni jek go kre je te tsar jang gore zere ta de khar kare go ko re jana de la tsar jana ta da kerang nilu gum yorwa nilu gum jinto kang kharwa semnang ni nam tok kharwa kharcha yinna da khwana control chik lang sona da yangna tani te nam tok jigna chik ke sona semche chik lang sona 디 샘체던 직나 대소 남독러와 디 하리용이 갑라 코랑 거양 마실 પર파 어유주지 비던 립식식나 랑파 비식 대 양고 그래서 대꿈 그래서 던디제야라 하차 대소 드니 가래 판토 요래제나 지마 어믹지 그 개발한 죽비니 깝나 르비 토락 니브진토 개발 접탑 그요래 테스터 양효래 야기 공도 가래 랍송제나 공도 개발 접진비니 깝나 밍메게 돈 짱거리제 송아 더 마오 파존죽셰피 체저와 역보 용위 쳇다 드니 밍메게 돈 고핀 곰비니 깝나 харча каре хар나야 마프주 પર જેકની કાંસમ કુમ રોરવા કુમ સોના તની માઓ પાના ગેવા કારે ડબનાયા ગુમ તા 냠 જતો તની રંક નીલુ ગુમ જિંતો 게발한 죽도 그요레스 손이 종죽로 덮그레스 디체토레스 때리레다 때 빼역 보징도 I don't know.
So basically, a summary of this here, of the middle paragraph on page 3 that starts with even if, is that even when our main focus is the referential accumulations, it's important that we don't forget non-referential wisdom to whatever degree we can, that we at least remember it in the midst of those. And so that's the summary of that. And now the next one is now when we're meditating on the non-referential accumulation. And so it says, well, meditating one-pointedly focused on the ultimate nature of sovereign equalness, through the freely resting of all appearances, nothing obscures the basic space of phenomena, but is recognized to be its ornamental display. Without stopping or producing, allow them to rest in and of themselves within their own ground. So now if we're doing a meditation session, because alternating between these two, or a period of the session in which now we're focusing solely on non-referential accumulation of wisdom. And this could be, for example, if you are someone who has had the instructions and the direct experience of recognizing the Buddha nature, the natural state, and you have a little bit of recognition and you're able to rest in that. Or this could be if you're someone who's had teachings on emptiness and you have certainty of the empty nature, whatever the case is, then at this time, whatever level of the non-referential wisdom you're able to meditate in, while meditating, one-pointedly within that ultimate nature, whatever appearances arise, then whatever they may be, whether it's the visual forms that you see with your eyes, audio sounds that you're hearing with your ears, or the tactile sensations of the body, or and so forth, forms, sounds, tastes, sense, tactile sensations, whatever is arising, and whatever it means very literally, whatever, it means everything that arises in that moment, whatever it may be, however it may appear to the 6 avenues of consciousness. And so it could be a mental state that's occurring, like you feel experience of faith. Or it could be mental turbulence in which you have a lot of thoughts that just won't stop. Essentially, when you sit on that seat with the intention to have a non-referential practice of wisdom, and you're focusing one pointedly on it, then whatever arises of the 5 sense avenues, the 5 objects, or of the mind, the avenue of the mental consciousness, the concepts that arise. At that time, then resting, don't try to block the appearances. Trying to stop them won't fix the problem. And so thinking, oh, I don't want to see that form, or oh, I don't want to hear that sound, or oh, I don't want to have that thought. Don't get caught up in the process of trying to get rid of certain things and produce or cultivate other things. So whatever arises, without stopping or producing it, simply allow it to be. That sort of freely resting of all appearances is allowing everything to be simply what it is. Sometimes people think that they need to shut down in meditation. So they want to close their eyes so they don't see forms. Well, if you close your eyes, you see black. You're still seeing. You didn't stop. You're just seeing something else. And so we can't stop that from happening. So it's like either you can close your eyes and you can see the dark, or they can be open and then there's a range of colors and so forth. But no matter what, you're still seeing. So trying to shut down your visual consciousness is not the solution. And that's why we don't shut it down. And we have the eyes open and we allow appearances to arise. Or like a sound. If you think that plugging your ears is going to get rid of the sound, if you plug your ears strong enough, they're going to start to ring on their own. If you push on them hard enough, there's still sound. You can't escape it. Don't try to block it. That's not the solution. We can't escape the objects of our consciousness. So, as you're meditating, you think that the appearances are harming the meditation or stopping you from meditating. And then you dislike them. And if you constantly do that, then in the future, when you're trying to engage in the referential accumulation of merit, you won't be able to in meditation. It can't happen in meditation because you created this state where there's this meditation in which you dislike anything else interrupting it. And you're fixated on the dislike and trying to block the other things, so you've created a very sensitive state of meditation. We can't escape the objects of our senses or our mind. And so in the ultimate wisdom meditation, we don't try to block and we don't try to produce. Whatever arises, we simply allow it to be without trying to stop it, without trying to block it. That doesn't also mean produce means like to chase after or try to grasp onto it or try to make it something in the whatever the experience in meditation is. We're not trying to chase after it either. Chase after the objects or chase after the thoughts or chase after the experiences. So we have to let go of both the stopping and the producing and simply allow our mind to rest in its naturally settled state. Mind, uncontrived, in complete naturalness. And so for someone who is at the level where they're able to recognize awareness and rest, just let go in that uncontrived, ongoing recognition then of Buddha nature, then you're simply not trying to stop things, not trying to produce things, and allowing them to simply be as they are. The same goes for if we're not quite at that kind of meditation, if we have confidence, if we have certainty in emptiness, and we're doing a vipassana, profound insight meditation, and we're resting in that certainty, in that knowing, then that also, this same advice applies at that level of practice. In fact, this even applies to shamatha, even when you're not doing vipassana practice, like the other two trainings. In shamatha, we also know that we're holding our mind one-pointedly focused and not trying to block out or produce anything else. We allow everything to simply be wide open as per those instructions. And so this same key point applies to every meditation. Not trying to block, not trying to produce. And on this ultimate level, simply allowing it to be in its own ground, whatever arises, arises. And there's an analogy that's given, definitely not the helicopter type society analogy, helicopter parenting, but in Tibetan culture, they say be like an old person who's watching children play. Because the old person doesn't care what the kids are doing. So they're there, and the kids are like in their sort of field of vision or awareness, but whatever the children are doing, they're not involved in it. So whether the children are playing with flowers or playing with stones or whatever they're doing, the children are all engaged in play. And the elderly person who's watching them is not engaged at all in the specifics. There's an awareness of the children within their sort of field of consciousness, but they're not like focusing on anything that the children are doing. They're not trying to stop them from doing that. They're not trying to make them do something else. They're just letting them be children. They're just letting them play. And so, similarly, whatever appearances arise, to simply allow them to arise and to be whatever they are. And in the context of like Dzogchen practice, this is called training in the expressive energy of awareness, in which while meditating in the natural state, whatever arises, in truth, that nothing does nothing exists in the natural state. And so that is because the natural state is beyond there being something to be established or not. There isn't anything there. Where does the problem come? The problem comes from our ordinary minds grasping to the thoughts. We like this, we don't like this. We want this, we don't want this. This is the problem, not what's actually taking place. The actual nature is not the problem. It's not Rigpa's problem, awareness's problem. It's our ordinary mind's problem. And that's something to know. So from the perspective of that, whatever thoughts arise, could be a thought of anger, could be a thought of fear, could be anxiety, whatever it is, doing nothing and just simply allowing it to be what it is, it will simply settle within its own ground. It will resolve in and of itself. And that's what one is training in and familiarizing in, so that the apparent aspect as it arises doesn't affect at all the recognition of the true nature. So then, looking at this, the kind of purpose in terms of the practice is that later, when you engage in referential practice of merit or virtue, that eventually you can do that while resting in awareness. And then you can engage in those activities. And so that begins even at the initial stages of meditating on awareness, where allowing the appearances, the training in that expressive energy. And it's the same in the previous, when you're focused on referential practice, then you still remember the ultimate non-referential practice. The purpose of both of those is so that eventually, as your practice evolves and grows, as you continue to train, that eventually there actually is a true unifying of the two accumulations, where there's an actual true unity in which you're resting within the recognition of the natural state and at the same time engaging in all kinds of virtuous activities. No so.
어때래 때니 인디 너라 때타우 남주와티 이런 그 냠랭 그 땅뜬니 라니 까데 라고 그 찰라 렙독 때 남심시니 때 린족시나 느껴요 송래 린족 출기 총이 저 합장가람에 비나키샤 송 때타도 더니 린족 출기는 총니까 릅탑시나 때랑가람에 바레 송래 당원이 샤나 카상공도 리똥 비니 갑라 레직 더니 믹지 그 게와 탐쳇도 제그니 믹메크 돈라 냠스 랭고 송송아 어때타우 셰 삼나랑 그 탑거렌더니 조 모르 믹메크 ngala 나주 더니 허니룩 ngala 냠직 셰야데 제랑 땅 제망 땅나 르키오르 떠랑랑 소수 냠땅 땡거래 때래 옛날 게와 가투 죽나연 죽비니 갑라 tani te niluku ton te tangu khayores oda te shini tani rinjuk zuyu lapkyang te langarba yo mare son te yakpore son khayore tani kansam chigla tani gumyang yang takba yo la niluku ngang la tawa nyamjik shini tamba chamjik maim par hirap ko rigpi niluku ngang la gum niluku ngang la yug jinto gewa drip thop khayores ngar kong te khatsam sha songa chikla drip top kamare se kansam chikla telarim ki lep dogres chogni zonjuk teni kansam chila yan rona kanang kankhar chachang gewala ngir dogres ya song songa yagi namjirwa namla tamche nyamlen des kansang parwi tarnang yurli ndi songa de tela lep doin sare kansam chikla Oh, tani res.
Therefore, for a practitioner immersed in awareness who recognizes the meaning of the ground of the indivisibility of the true truths, it is not contradictory to alternate training in the two accumulations corresponding to their own experience. This crucial point must be understood. So basically, corresponding to our own experiences, whatever level of the practice we're at, we've seen there's a lot of different ways in which we approach the gathering of accumulations, the two accumulations. And it's perfectly fine if that is one in which we're alternating between the two. It's not contradictory, and so forth. And you may recall in yesterday's teaching, there's a section where it says beginners to Dzogchen practice, that there may be periods where they purposely let go of all referential merit accumulations in order to solely focus on non-referentiality as needed. And that may be a point in one's practice where, for a period of time, that is appropriate. Or perhaps then there's a point in we're alternating between the two accumulations like mentioned here, but then where maybe we do more longer periods of the accumulation of non-referential wisdom and so forth, where that begins to be longer. And that all depends on our capacity and where we're at. And that is not about where we want to be at or imagine ourselves, but where our mind is actually at its level right now when we look at it. And so there is no contradiction to alternating between the two accumulations. And and then eventually, as we have focused time on referential merit and we practices and we remember non-referential wisdom in that, and as we dedicate times to just non-referential wisdom practice, and as we gradually progress in that process, there will be a point where we're resting in the meditative equalness of that view, where it's not just where we're remembering the view while engaged in virtuous activities, but we're actually in the view. And we reach a point at which we're actually resting in the natural state that is recognized in awareness, wisdom. and we're able to engage in the accumulation of virtue and other trainings. And as it said at the very beginning of the text, this is possible because they don't obscure each other. That's not, that they don't need to obscure each other. And so eventually we get to a point where, for those powerful yogins, everything that appears and arises are experienced as virtuous in nature, as the gathering of accumulations, and continuously are that. So.
Tere, tenindi migji tang mingmek tsugni kalan juk surte huerna nyamjik tang jitop nyamne ni katang jarna tabdewo yore karrezena nyamjik ne kapna mingmek nyamlen tsowore nilukungala nyamjik tsekchikte shini tingala mapchu parjriate tere tirni kala kake Chawab Jakayo Mare, Naksakayo Mare, Donkayo Mare, Kayang Mapshini, Teni Gum, Zerchik, Shini Tinganta, Dugate, Yamjik, Ta, Shakir, Natu, Ton Kanala, Ton Jatnina, Teni Rank, Yamjik, Juktang Chipigoni, Natang Chipigoni, Yamlim Shiat, Tem Yamjikre. Teni Yamjik near Dang Song Jila, Terta Ustawa, Tetangu, or Wakatu. Gewa drupke yo na da mena da nyamjik tawa tran ni ro karche more di nang ta mixer to gewa drupa ta jarni sherwa teni namjin ka nga so jithop ka kabla rang ka tawa kare ngoki yo na za nyel ro nduk li kap she yo na tawa tran bi goni ro na pe poyore karche more es lagbar ta teni jithop ka ne kapna nga chu chok sak pa da drupa jangwa ta na gewa Samkima Kapi Mambolan Jukuyor when you marry Rivjento. Rana Sosu Kantap Chitapchi in Jukuyore. O te Tawchik Jupi Kabla, te Stava the Tanjinto, Tanjuga the Kachembore, Esere. O Terete, Nyamjik Jitop Nikatan Jarni, Koachik Lena, Teni Kaparchigore, Samkado.
We can also gain understanding by seeing the correlation between what we call non-referential accumulation of wisdom and the referential accumulation of merit, the two accumulations, in regards to what's called formal meditative equipoise and post-meditation. Formal meditative equipoise refers to, it's not about practice sessions or not. It specifically refers to when we've set a session to specifically rest in the non-referential wisdom. And one-pointedly are focused on that, and our mind is uncontrivedly resting on that. And at that time, we engage in no activities. We're not using our mala. We're not reciting mantra. We're not chanting any other recitations. We're not focusing on any other objects of meditation or qualities that we're developing, but solely on the non-referential resting in wisdom. And for however long we're resting in that wisdom is called the meditative equipoise. And then post-meditation, whether you're still sitting in a session or not, would be all the other activities, all the other practices, and all the virtuous activities and things that we engage in. And at those times, when we've risen from meditative equipoise, then we're applying the mindfulness of remembering that wisdom view throughout all the other activities that we're engaged in, whether it's formal sessions of those activities, practices, or other virtuous activities. And then, especially throughout our daily activities, during post-meditation, we want to remember that view. when we're eating, walking, talking, sitting, moving around, to remember that view as much as we can and to bring it to that as much as we can. And particularly then in post-meditation, all the times when we're not resting in non-referential view, we're putting our efforts to the best of our capacity to engage in as many positive and virtuous actions and activities as we possibly can, as much as we're able. And then to always be trying to remember, have the mindfulness that remembers that view, that remembers that nature throughout all of those. And so then that would be how we would correspond. Then the formal meditative equipoise would be non-referential wisdom, and then post-meditation would be referential merit. Also,
오야 데리 데니 다 회나 가성이 결혼조 담박섬 셰저와 요라 샘께 담바스 누지 밍메 담바 지 뭐와 담바스 게와 강 접나 득섬 듣기 즌요나 득섬 때덤 르리요나 득섬 딘 나랍 죽니 냠냄 셰나 빼마트 비역 보요레스 가성이 유이나 결혼조라 뜻가리레제나 회나 회나라나 소수 때랑 굼지 겹나 가리 굼나양다 냠는 집 셰나 디군도 당이 회칙 저나 가르샤 고근도제나 답 대고 찍라 더니 걔랑 그다 휘식 지금 살나 당보 랑그 깜로 요나 베가 쳔보리 더 나와 상기밥 시룩라 꼼축섬라 캡순로와 당본로 teni ti jila bjora semke tambas tab bjora semke tambas na rang terang shik sal kyo na ti shik te kulhung kare ke zingu kyo re tambo motivation kare zena shangchip ke semke ngun den rogu gimsan tere shangchip ke sem ke chu kerang ke shik chik sal sona te shangchip semki zin yo na te shangchip semki geware samti me kyapi gewa samti me kyapa kyursore gewa te tapki zimbar shepa shangchip ki sem zede tere gar te shangchip ki sem ki zin me na sheng china yang ta dong gewa re te won kyang tani tar thukpi tarwa thopar shepi gewa mare kyeram shakte Deep Sherna Teni Shangchip Sem Hunlan Rog, we give some terry. Teni Muji Mingme Tambazat and Digni Kapshaya de Terry. When I can Shan Sarjin Bini Kamna, Sony Zonjuk Shetokona, Rabre, Shan Salkayopa, Luiki Namjurtan, Sem Gatapa Jekayopatan, Nakachig Kamro no Hoyopala Sopa, Chatamata, a mixi sonum good socre, Shak Sarvi Kabla. Teni tetang nyam chikto rang ke tomba ni kirni lu tran bijinto shek salwa am yana gema dar malam yimbar hibjinto tran bijinto shek salna ne teni te mingme ke chogo ze khiore zonjuk ngoma thab khmena yang te mingme ke chogo ze ni mang tagna de yore Di kerang ke shek te la biora semke ke zimba mazet ni pa nguji mingme tambe yang zin sore te tam rer songa ta shek kerang ke tamap chin sarna di ji la ngowa tang molum me po chipsi semchen tamchit dewa tang dan dungar tang trarbi gyur ngob jigna gewa te tani ngowa tang molum re semchen tamchen tartu gu shangchip topi chet nguna teni ngowa tang molum sere 다 가립 시키요레 제나네 계란급 시간 사리아데 랑톤 직보 마임바 샘친 탐 체크 체도 겨송아리 가르지나 교 샘께 디오레 시간 직보 샘가 요피 gem산 때리 데니 니바데 계란급 시간 사리아데 nguji mingme tambi zanna ne kare chongkhu yore zena nguji mingme tambi zanna gewa te kenki njik thap kyo mar nga chu gewa mangbo chi drip charwi ji la mangba kherang ka khongtho langwa tang teni teb jin tu jambi mirgewi semna la kharwa la so pala tenni rong ka gewa kang drip charwa te njik do kyo re mingme nguji mingpa me pi chi ki zan sona kenki njik ma tapare kyo gewa te zagmik ki gewa na wo chik sore teni ji ngoba tamba ti karib shek yore zena kerangab shek ngoni shana thamab che thambam tsari yore ta semchen thamchen lar ngob shek na ti gewa te trangka zaya chik tsawa nini yo mar tendi mangpo chik lab shek che thamba te njir sore gewa te kongni kong tum phero shepa te njuk ngoba tamba zaya te tere teni shini nyamlem shina ta ngoni sem dur thap kare nga tu sem tab yung thap kare teni res
You may, you may recall, Rinpoche said, that yesterday I began with the 3 excellent principles of practice. We have our excellent beginning, cultivation of bodhicitta, our excellent main part, non-referential wisdom, and our excellent conclusion, dedication of merit and aspirations. And that whatever positive action, practice, that is held by these 3 becomes a cause for the ultimate fruition. And this is our practice structure. Any practice that we do, any positive action that we do, if we have it in that context of that structure of the 3 excellent principles, it becomes something extraordinary. And so, whatever kind of meditation practice you're doing, or whatever kind of practices or trainings that you're engaging in, we'll just take a very simple example, one that's easy to use. Like, take for example, if you're doing prostrations. First of all, you have your excellent beginning. And the beginning should always include going for refuge. So going for refuge is important because that is the support in the Buddhist tradition. And then we begin by relying on and connecting with the 3 jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, as our support. And so to recite the words of refuge at the outset. And then we have the excellent beginning that's called generation of bodhicitta. And so then we cultivate our motivation, which means we check our mind. Why are we going to do these prostrations? What's the reason? And then you meditate on bodhicitta so that your reason is bodhicitta, that you're motivated out of that. That becomes the why you're about to do this activity, is because you have the bodhicitta intention. And so, in this way, then the bodhicitta is the method that embraces the positive action or quality that we're cultivating and ensures that it becomes a path to an awakening, which makes sense etymologically, being that bodhicitta is awakened mind. The terms match in the Sanskrit and the Tibetan, not in the English. So if you have the mind of bodhicitta, it becomes a cause for bodhi, essentially. And so that's its method. If you're not motivated out of bodhicitta, and you engage in prostration or any other kind of ordinary activity, then it doesn't become a cause for bodhi, for awakening. It's just an ordinary activity. Yes, it's a positive action. It will have a positive effect, but it doesn't aim us towards the fruition and purpose of the path. And that's why we start with that motivation. So that's the excellent beginning, the first principle of practice. The arousal of bodhicitta as our motivation. Then the excellent main part is non-referential. So of course, if you're able to do the complete unity of the two accumulations there, then by all means, that would be what you would do. But if not, then when you go to prostrate, you have the physical expression of the body going through the motions, your speech, you're reciting a prayer such as going for refuge, and with your mind you have faith and devotion. All of that body, speech, and mind are the accumulation of merit that has a reference point, referential accumulation of merit. And at the same time as you're doing that, you can remember their empty nature, or you can remember their dreamlike nature, or illusory nature. And that's sort of sufficient. That can be called the non-referential accumulation of wisdom. It isn't the full unifying yet. It's not where they're a unity. But it's sufficient, and it's where we start and eventually build on. And so you're doing even just one prostration. You first began with the excellent beginning by generating bodhicitta. Then while you were doing it, you had some level of recognition of or recollection of wisdom, the non-referential accumulation, which is the main part, which is called the main part, the non-referential main part. And then now at the end, maybe you ended up doing 10 prostrations or whatever it is. Now you dedicate the merit. And so you think, may the merit of these prostrations, I dedicate that to all sentient beings, that they may have happiness and that they may be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, and ultimately attain the state of complete and total awakening. And you make aspirations and dedications in that way. And so now you have the excellent conclusion of dedication. In this way, when we look at the act of prostration, it wasn't something that you did just to help yourself. But you began by generating bodhicitta and thinking, I'm going to do this in order to benefit all sentient beings, with a very specific aim. And then that's what it is. It becomes a cause for that. You embraced it with the method of bodhicitta. The method is what makes the virtue the cause for awakening, that makes it the cause for what we're aiming it for. And then the second is while you're engaging in the prostrations, then you incorporate the non-referential main part by remembering, to whatever degree you are able, that ultimate nature. What that does when we have the non-referential main part sort of encase the action, the virtuous action, then is that makes it such that it's like invulnerable to harm, to being destroyed by other flaws, other conditions. Invulnerable to being destroyed by other conditions. Which is that when we have ordinary positive actions that we engage in, cannot be destroyed by conditions. When we engage in just an ordinary positive action without these components, then that positive action is vulnerable to harm. It can be destroyed or basically overridden or and so forth by other negative factors, like we could become angry, or we could have all kinds of negative thoughts, or we could engage in different negative actions. And then those actions are vulnerable to being destroyed, basically. Like basically they're blighted out by the negativity that followed. But when we engage in a positive action with that non-referential main part, when there's that wisdom enveloping that action, it makes it so that it's not vulnerable to harm. It isn't able to be destroyed by other conditions. And so then it becomes a sort of a special kind of positive action that isn't vulnerable in the way that other positive actions are. Can't be destroyed by other conditions. And then in the end, when we have the excellent conclusion of dedicating the merit, so we've done like 10 prostrations, you can count it, it's 10, 10 actions or whatever. But when you dedicate that, the merit of that, to all infinite sentient beings, it infinitely expands the amount, the sort of extent or scope of that merit. It's no longer just limited to just that single act, but now it's been dedicated to each and every being. And so it expands and increases and creates a kind of a momentum of merit and virtue that increases. And that's what dedicating the third principle, excellent principle of practice of dedication of merit does. And when we practice like that, we're working on taming our mind. And that is the structure that provides that. And so that is how we always want to train with these three excellent principles of practice. So.
teni tam juglam jugdut telane ta lamdi zokching lamdi kyachu tangchipi goni kyachu goni mapsha tiensare demba ni kibdupi lam chernyet mangar yon zongombar changchipi chetripshi kyang koyang lobde zokchinam ki lamyang takpim cho sonduk ta kare zere zenane demba ni kibdupi lam ta konzop demba tang tondom demba ni ka lam yena teni kanong dugu kyore yoto chok tamche jipi tonde wena nyantu ki takpa nim zongte yagi dorje takpi bar ko takpa tam chek nyamneng ko kannat tam chete te tangarwa futsam yo mares zoching galam te mangarwa mazat omi nyamlen tam chete gomi zoching ka nyamlen ka nan du yore jibi tonde 용어서 족바 대다우터 코랑 조친가 아때 여기 탁바시비 나도 던딘두어레스 대다우 냠슬렘비 간서 남기 치르트르시경 고영와당 롭데와인 그레세 가레지나 람 마창 완다워당 람 용서 족바 마임 반다워당 teni yo mares huena thakba ogma ka lam nyantu ka lam rawo chigla yugna ta tong thakba koma thamche to zog yo mar tinang dug marwa teni shangchup sanhui thakba thakching ka lam ka nang la ti nang la yang teni ti lam koma te so dug yo mar teni dorje thakpi yang tani dorje thakpi ngak shirgyuk gyuddev ji tigni kapna 너르죽 그냠는 그나 참차 누요 말해. 다롱 카마창 와당 탐쳇 용수 족반다고 요 말해. 더니 nga 너르죽 냠는 셰피니까 따동 족친 그냠는데 두는 디능라 차창 누요 말해. 족친 그냠는 그 능라 오미람 그나 탐쳇 야 두레서. 족 요레서. 디셔나는 냠는 시나는 강터 시경 더니 로 고양오. 그 독보 마임바. 탐쳇 숑터비아당 누터비아 남카타로 더니 잠조 쳔보타오. 원든지 그더니 람치그레스 족친글람시 빠테. 디 냠는 칸티 셈페 고양보당 롭데오 첨득반다오 지 용그레스. ngoni zobshin ke nyamlen kan yenna ndarta wu tsogni zonju kgnat chebjin to nyamslen tem kan ka kangzakla tendi yongya yores garib shini ndendi yong yore zena na zobchin nam ke lam ya takbim chog ze zobchin ke lam zate teni khantu ni kyang ne rya chenbo ku yangbo yemba takba tamchik tsemo yemba tak바 탐치금 축도 결바염바 회나 어리 겨버 럽 그제니 옥 름튼 차창마트 도직든 통화따도 어때리레스 조친 코랑그 문이 남까나 때리레스 문이 똑바티나라 때리마보 너해요레 만두바요 말을 오미람 강당양 가르바요 말을 મંગારવા માં 용족 하나 탐치 뛰는라 창오래서 더 탁밤 촉득길 바래송 드니 음죽디송 인단데 요걸 다른 데지셔요 랍칠렘
No matter what a practitioner does who has reached the full and complete realization that the entire path comprised by the two truths is not contradictory, their mind will be open and at ease. This is what is called the sky-like path of Dzogchen, the vast and supreme vehicle. So the path of the two truths, relative truth and ultimate truth, which are both subsumed within that path. And so a practitioner has reached the full realization that the entire path comprised by the two truths is not contradictory. So the entire path means starting with the Shravakayana all the way up to the Vajrayana, up to the pinnacle approach of the Dzogchen, the entire path. And so someone who has realized this, the Dzogchen view, realizes that the entire path comprised by the two truths, that there is no contradiction whatsoever. And it's able to hold all of the paths are subsumed within it. And so as the highest approach, then all the other approaches are subsumed within it. And that's what the Dzogchen Ati Yoga approach is. And so then when someone is practicing this, this is inclusive of the entire path. In entirety, all its components, all its aspects are embraced within its scope. Whereas when one is practicing a different approach, one of the lower vehicles, it does not include the higher vehicle. And so, for example, then the lower approach of the Shravakayana, it has its approaches included within it, but it's still not the entire or complete path because there are other approaches above it that it does not include, that it does not have room for. Or then when you get to the path of the bodhisattvas of the Mahayana, if it's only that, then it's not including the other paths, and so there's still more that it's not inclusive of. It's not able to encompass the scope of the other higher path. And then the Vajrayana so the Bodhisattvayana will include the scope of the Shravakayana. It includes all the lower paths, but not those that are above it. And then the Vajrayana, in turn, includes all those lower paths, but also within the Vajrayana, there's the cat classes of the outer tantras. Those outer tantras do not include the scope of the inner tantras. And so in a way, you could say there's something it's still not there, that's still not complete within that. And so even at that point, it's not complete. And here that word is the dzogchen of the dzogchen, complete, which is why my preferred translation is great completeness. And then within the inner tantras, then not all of them include the dzogchen. And so then they're not complete. But when you get to the dzogchen, then it includes all the other paths up to, and including itself in entirety, it is complete. It is dzogchen. It's great completeness. All the key points of all the practices are subsumed within it, are present within it. And so a practitioner who has reached that realization that is able to embrace the completeness of all of the paths within it, their minds are extremely open. Their minds are not narrow. There's room for everything in this vast sort of to fit within that compass. And so there's a complete ease of mind because there's a completeness to it. And so then their minds will be open and at ease. And that is what will happen if someone is actually practicing and realizing the dzogchen. The path is vast and spacious and all-inclusive of all the vehicles are subsumed within it. And that's why we refer to it as the pinnacle vehicle, the supreme approach. The analogy is like reaching then the peak of Mount Meru, the king of all mountains, and then you can see all the continents below. Everything is within the view. Everything can be seen from that vantage point. And so, from the perspective of the dzogchen itself, if it actually is realized, everything is complete within its scope. And then there are none of the lower paths are seen as contradictory. They're all complete within it. They're all subsumed within it. Also?
teni tander teni dim juktela dal habsha chinduk chi ndala gjibshi ndushi tigersa kat maksud patang gjib deni lam tsognim riu kuni zonju ku tsur lakpar shapa zokshin kor kharkong gu so soni dandinang kare sondu zenana ta khong gdir kap sundor dubachik kannat chamchik trio sore tsoni zonju kor tandelap teni 다동 더니 고야치 가래 고근독제나 누시 지게사 캬트 먹솥 바당제 누시 지게와 탐체 뜻가침 보임 바 캬솥 먹셴 바데 조칭 글람 그나라 서셴 피니 비적고 히오레 직데레 그니 가래레제나네 Dzogchen kanangla Dembagni, Jib Dembagni ki namjik halipi gyachenbo chik shat yo mares. Lam tsogni ke namjik yang mikchi tang mingme ke tsog halipi mampo shat yo mares. Mar Jib deni zongju kurna zekre. Jib deni zongju kurna tang. Deni lam tsogni zongju riu kogni zongju ke tsor lakpar shat yo mar. Tip sherna teni kong de la song yo pa tir jib shi ni maung pa de la ka kongu kre ezer. Khiba lama jamba nam ki de la sarshit chi goyate ta tong ka kongu khdu songre. Ta songyate ter songre ti yik chung ku ton tere.
So then there's a small colophon writing at the end, and it says, taking this as the basis, do not look down on the composite roots of virtue. And with thorough explanations on how the ground has two truths, the path has two accumulations, and the result is the union of the two kayas. Use this to supplement the cycles of Dzogchen transmissions. So, here's just like kind of a summary saying using this as a basis, like these instructions that are given here, then we should not, like those approaching Dzogchen and so forth, should not look down on the composite roots of virtue and the accumulation of referential virtue. And these are points that are the Dzogchen nang la sel she mindu sel she sha din so nang la Dzogchen din so la su yo mare che sang jamba la ka kong gu du ze du. Magic.
Yeah, it's okay.
I just don't understand that point.
Don't understand.
So what I think Rinpoche said, but I'm not certain, I'll just say it and then he'll tell you if I'm right or wrong, is that the process of accumulating the roots of virtue and the explanations on how the ground has two truths and the path has two accumulations and the result is the union of the two kayas. And I think that that's taught elsewhere, not in the Dzogchen text, and so one needs to receive instructions on those specifically to supplement the cycle of Dzogchen transmissions. That might be what he said.
And the Dzogchens, these two unions of true truth and two unions of two accumulations, two unions of two kayas. And Dzogchen's text only give here and there a little bit, not so details. Therefore, Mabam Rinpoche is saying is we need this art in there, and the lamas need teaching these and the details, the important things. We need to teach these. These have to have need addition. So that's the meaning. Teni tandi nani kerang zongi kasang tsukni gui gimsen kare wa ni gui yorezete. Di toni yongre kerang zo hako gre. Jib deni lam tsukni riu kogni zongwa. Di kablangi kerang zo shada. Jib what?
Lasso.
Jib deni zete jib korang kondup demba tang tondum demba ni ka zongju krezeri. Tondum demba tomba ni de tomba ni yin jin to kondup ka na tam chit kondup ko demba khare yo pa te jib deni zongju krez. Ta nga chu goma sha pi ni kap na sha kyo re. Tenang jin de jib deni zongju krez. Ta ji korang ni kap li tambo ji korang ni kam na deni zongju krez. chu thamchal jarna tenire nga chu sem ki nilu dershik nyang po lab jarna dershik nyang po khorang jire deni zonjuk dershik nyang po la ok sarvi yekhi ki chayore ter nang chari ti nang wi chani kunjob demba zena digre deni dershik nyang po ok sarva yin mjinto yin vjinto ramjin ngowo zekorwa ngo ramjin ki matapar ngo toni yin vjinto ok sarva ok sar yin vjinto toni tang ok sar ni zongjukre ti mala deni zonjuk zere ngatsu dershik nyang po ngatsu sem ki niluk jib dever shepe nyang po korang la teni korang niluk tere zere ta te zonjukre ndwa ta te gukhyo pi gemsan ki lam yang choni zonjuk she gore zere
Oh,
Karre zena lam kirne kam na yang nang cha tang tong cha ni go ge lam kirne kam na yang kong tu sha partar to choni zonjuk gore ze karte choni zonjuk mapshi na kare chak no gore zena thar tuk bim dibur kogni zonjuk thobya yo mar tan dina kogni zonjuk lam duga to churku tang zukku ze yore churku zena na thar tuk bi 마음 빔 리우토피 네캅가 어니룩 동바니 그 차텔라 추르쿠제키오레 동바니 옌빈토 다 상지지고 우즈쿠 롱슈 족비코당 도르제 생화타고 롱슈 족비코당 뚜르위코 덴고르보체당 상지 카캬타 파타고 뚜르위코데 대초더니 나차리 군접 그 차세는 되게 나와래 디입시나 출구 땅 죽고 종죽래 다 오나 믹집 소놈 그 속삭 발라 땐니 가래 용효래잖아 마음 비 죽고 톱고요래 롱고 땅 뚫고니 톱고래 디 쪽라 동반이 고고요래 믹메 그 속대 믹메 예히 그 쪽라 땐니 마음 빔 디부 출구 톱고래 디 쪽라 믹지 그 쪽고요래 지그지글라 땐니 니김 리부 마음 바나 너니 용고요래 거나 나투 메톡직 살랍답 나야 디 사본 겐칠러 쪽셔당 대빈도 올해 겐 치당 르당 대빈도 치 쪽셔당 대som 리우 먼저 요르바 메톡 개위니 감나 리우 먼저 요르바 옛날 지그지글라 쪽법 셰고 그요래 니가 말때나 메톡 종고요 말 대 남진 때니 람 속니 구이 겸선 때리 하고 소아 지 코랑 데니 zonjugre 람 코랑 속니 zonjugre 리블 꾸니 zonjugre 때였나 통타 var섬도 zonjuk 코나그 로고요래 어때 하고 그래 니 거직샤나 따로 기밥샤야 요래다 대랑아 저들 값서 마와 삐셔나 때 잠직셰게 되니 해서
and so this section needs to be retranslated as well. It should read, with the union should be the union of the two truths, the two accumulations, and the two kayas. It goes for all of them, not just the last. So I'll fix that later. So in the beginning, Rinpoche said, I spoke about why do we need the two accumulations, that there's actually a reason, and that you would know at the end. And so this is it. And so we have the ground of the two truths, the path of the two accumulations, and the result or the fruition of the two kayas.
차성 데르도 거래
All of these are connected.
lam,
Ground, path,
some
fruition.
come
All three are connected. They all correspond. There's corresponding factors throughout the entirety. So the ground of the two truths is the unity of relative truth and ultimate truth. They are ultimately a unity. And that is because even as a relative truth, all the things that appear arise. Their nature is emptiness. Even as they are empty, they arise. And so relative truth and ultimate truth are ultimately a primordial unity, are the same. And this is something you understand when you study, for example, Madhyamaka, the middle way teachings and philosophy. And that's the ground is the unity of the two truths, of those two. And then the ground itself is our Buddha nature. If we apply it to the natural state, the nature of our mind, which is the unity of the two truths. Our Buddha nature is clear luminosity, timeless knowing. This could be called the apparent aspect. In terms of the two truths, we could call it the relative truth. But while our Buddha nature is clear luminosity, timeless knowing, its essence is emptiness. So by its very nature, it is not established according to any conceptual extremes. It's empty by nature. And so emptiness is clear luminosity. Clear luminosity is emptiness. They're a primordial unity. Now I know why Lama Chukyi translates Zungjuk as a primordial unity instead of just a unity. So the primordial unity of the two truths are the ground, our Buddha nature. And that's why when we have the path, we have the unity of the two accumulations. And so there's the aspect of the path that is the apparent aspect, and the aspect of the path that is the empty aspect. And these correspond to the two truths. And so the path is accumulating the two, is the unifying the two accumulations. And when those two accumulations are perfected or completed, the result is the two kayas. We have Dharmakaya and what's called Rupakaya. So Dharmakaya would be like the formless aspect, and Rupakaya is the form aspect. So Dharmakaya is the ultimate natural state, the empty nature of all phenomena, emptiness. And yet while it is empty, then manifestations, such as the manifestations on the level of realization, Buddhas appear or manifest in the Rupakayas, form appearances to benefit beings. And you have Sambhogakaya manifestations, the Sambhogakaya forms, and then you have Nirmanakaya manifestations, which would be like Shakyamuni or Guru Rinpoche. The apparent aspect of these we can call relative truth, or the relative aspect, the apparent aspect. Their ultimate nature, the emptiness aspect, is the ultimate truth. And so it is the unity, the fruition is the unity of the two kayas, of Dharmakaya and Rupakaya, form kaya. And how does the path ripen or bring about the fruition of the two kayas? By perfecting the referential accumulation of merit. This ultimately results in form kayas, rupa kayas, the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya. And it is supported by and continuously sort of aided by the non-referential accumulation of wisdom. Then the non-referential accumulation of wisdom, that is what primarily bears fruit or becomes the fruition of Dharmakaya and is supported by the referential accumulation of merit. And so each of them are mutually supporting each other. Kind of like, for example, if you plant a flower, then you have the seed, but then you also need all of the conditions: water, soil, nutrients, sun, and so forth. And they're mutually dependent. If those,
Not to when
for example,
사원 라떼니 메토 게레제야 갖고 오기오래가.
we know that a flower comes from its seed.
옛나양
However,
seed 당
the seed is dependent upon all those conditions: water, soil, and so forth. We don't know, exactly how. We don't know what role they play or how they contributed. But we yeah. But
I'm not asking you. Yeah.
so we don't know which is what features of the flower is the result of the water, the heat, the moisture, the nutrients, and so forth.
I know you guys are thinking how the two accumulations are working right now. Then how you working then these we
don't even know something that simple, like the exact role of the water and nutrients and so forth. We know that the flower needs them and the amount that it needs, but we don't know exactly what part of the flower they're contributing. And that's what I mean when I say these things are beyond the scope of ordinary conceptual mind to be able to figure out how it all works. But experientially, we know that we need a seed, and it's the cause for that kind of flower. We know that it needs how much sun and moisture and nutrients. So who knew that we needed two accumulations? The Buddha knew. The infinite Buddhas, they knew that those two accumulations were necessary in order to bring about that fruition. What's the difference? Why do we have to know it all exactly?
How about that?
So we need the path of the two accumulations in order to bring about the twofold fruition of the two kayas. So in this way, we have the unity of the two. The ground is the unity of the two truths. The path is the unity of the two accumulations. The fruition is the unity of the two kayas. We need the unity in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end. And of course, this discussion is something that needs a lot more attention, but not in this context. If there was only one truth and not two truths, then you would only need one accumulation. And you would only have one result. And so while this topic could be gone into great extent, Rinpoche said that's as far as we're going this weekend. So now we have completed this teaching in the most excellent manner. I've been wanting to give it for a long time. Rinpoche said it's so rare to find such an extraordinary, pithy, clear advice on unifying the two accumulations. In fact, I myself have never come across anything as concise and clear as this instruction that we have from Mipam Rinpoche here. Particularly one that is combining that with the Dzogchen approach. We all hear we need the two accumulations, and there are teachings on the two accumulations. But there aren't many that are clear and concise and have it all, and so you should study this again and again. And then that will help your practice to grow and progress. And you'll have more enthusiasm for accumulating both the accumulations. Translator side note, this will be edited and it will be in your accounts. So you have to look later to find it.
드니
the right
죽텔라
corrections.
가라 뇽뇽 집샤야 요케랑소.
So,
가리 요제나 셔땅 그 땅상 다 둥을 닝미 두레 데니 종진 직박 망축 대비진 또 갸캅 망보 그와르테 멈탄바 데니 갸캅 라나 소수 나라야 chapter 땅 화암저 땅 르그니 간지 통니는 게라 망보 로히 두초데 데니 마마부 셈 축거래 가서 셈 법대와 망보 용고요래 마마보 so 딥셔나니 디 텔라 라나 소수 ngatu lobjong de kyang tu khuk yabrok chis ti nani tani gawa gum yate tu la bam do gawa gum thap ti na yor ba gawa gum na gawa ke yong gore sem na ngacho nguni gore sem gawa gum na ke yong gore koram te tang teni kamshong gab gum ko mangak za chi yore gyati laglan sem chi sobdun mim juk la yore derwa chi go pa tim juk la yore teni ngam mangin de khwet ti chet nyong 감숑 갑금 그 망각제래 까리 숑나 까리 있나양 가압 곰비 망각직 요래 나송군이 때 다카르쳔부 투촐라 렙둑 캐랑투 때 셈라직 종록 치제테 대인 데니 카상이 로서 그 오래 될라고 만두 데니 랑축 마쇼 젠셈 마크툭 자치 요래 라마 입지 노루 추던 직된 니기 돔측 쳔복 찍래 랑축 마셔스 더제나 가르제케오즈나 직된 글룩이 나양 야랍 잠쇼크 축 런이 야랍 쇼장 요르와 데 마님 파치제 켄 카렘 차짱 담비 추그냠낸 그 축대양 마님 파치 제나 랑축 마셔스 비톤데 랑그 돈도 랑축 마셔스 데니 젠셈 마크툭 제아테 젠락 노파 마프체 제 룽가 익섬지 고니 젠락 노파 마프체 제 데니가 가츠 땅상 빼 게랑라나 소수 선영이 로서클 끝차리요 말와 디 로서클 닌디 몰라 찌 티나랑이 비제요 이 캐랑 솔라 거요 trashi delak chi juyo loser la ting olang ibjerio rana sosu tesem lazon rantsuk mashur jansem maktuk zeate tere jansem maktuk zena khwena chapter ngamba ta chichi ngamba ta chachang la not pa ta tiri yona ngatsu tela lika li ning ma te ze ke yo mar te li gore shopa ga goni shek gore ngatsu kare gyar khabla rok pa shek guna shek gore mamang la rok pa shek guna shek gore rana sosu take actions no problem ker go kyore hago songa deto 대양 아주 정쇼땅 집이 고니 랑축 마커비 통립 셰 고kyore 어때때 셈라 종록 치스
And I just want to say a little at the end here. We are in a very turbulent time. I think we can easily say a degenerate age where there are a rise in the natural disasters of the elements, rise in dispute, in war, and so forth, and in which then countries are in dispute, and then within countries, the various politics and changes and so forth, and a lot of instability and unrest and suffering. And people's minds are very disturbed and hard to find ease. And so then my encouragement is to use the mind training tools that you have. Carry adversity onto the path. This is the time. These are the conditions. That's what you use it for. Put effort into that. And also to emphasize one of the aspects that in general, but also to also remember to generate the joy. The rejoicing meditation in which you focus on the positive things and generate that joy. And to find joy in whatever occurs. There's a pith instruction at the end that comes sort of after the 7 key points of instruction. Finding joy no matter what
when
occurs.
When we do in Lojong, joy is really joy. That is to have reason. Okay, because we rejoicing because we have practice, and this is success. And then we have rejoicing. I'm so glad you have reason. But joy sometimes don't need reason at all. Even you every day you laughing a lot yourself. Don't do that in the publicly because people think you are crazy. And but yourself, you just really like laughing. And you can be really laughing from inside. When I was young, I did study that. I mean, as we did the monks, I was pretty wild, you know. I tried many things. I heard the older lamas talking about laughing, making joyful. Oh, wow, I thought that. And then they talking, and then I got it. And then I went to different places. I tried, by myself. Not really fake laughing. It's really laughing coming. If you do these like a few times a day, that's no reason, you know. There's just you making, just made up, and then you laughing, and they make you happy. I promise, you see. Okay, what I'm saying is that the joy, we need it's a time to really practice rejoicing. Thank you.
And so I think I made a mistake. After the practices of the 37 practices of a bodhisattva, there's an instruction called finding joy in whatever occurs. And so we really want to find the joy and to focus on those elements. And it's really important to practice that rejoicing in the things that you see that are good and really like focus on that as much as you can in the rejoicing practice. So that's one thing.
We don't need wrinkles anymore.
So then, the next, and in all of this, then it brings to mind Yezhe Norbu, His Holiness Jigme Punsok's advice in which he said, don't lose your own ground. Don't disturb the minds of others. And don't disturb others' minds. That is a very powerful. It applies to both our Dharma practice and our worldly concerns. And whatever conditions that we are facing or encounter, don't lose your own ground. You know, hold to your integrity and your practice and the tools and what you have to remain stable in your own ground. And don't disturb others' minds mean don't engage in actions physically, verbally, and mentally that cause harm to others.
It's don't losing your own ground have many different meanings. What I'm saying is that I mentioned 2 meanings. Worldly way, the positives, don't losing your worldly good positive things. Okay? Dharma way, don't losing your ground, which means that you don't losing your practice under these conditions. Mm-hmm.
And then don't disturb others' minds. And so we need to have great care then of how we act. And then we're not disturbing others. That in the sense, not harming others, that whatever we're doing so with the wish to benefit them and not the wish to harm them. And so don't, and that also then both corresponds to the Dharma tradition of Dharma practice and also our mundane worldly culture and circumstances as well. In this message, Rinpoche said, I have a short message that will be coming out on Losar, on the Tibetan New Year Day, which I believe is the 28th of February, and that those 2 lines, don't lose your own ground, don't disturb others' minds, are going to be in that message.
That's my New Year gift, okay?
It's Rinpoche's New Year's gifts that will be coming.
The present.
That doesn't mean that that doesn't mean don't take necessary action to benefit beings. It doesn't mean don't take action in your country to stop harm. It doesn't mean that you become inactive. Wherever you see, if there are injustices, if there are actions that need to be taken to benefit beings in your country, in your society, in your culture, take actions. But always take actions with a kind heart and with the intent to benefit others. And then you still have those two words. Don't lose your own ground. Don't disturb others' minds. It still counts. And so that doesn't mean to not take action. Take action. Do what you can to benefit. Do what's needed and necessary. Lisa?
Okay, thank
Nope,
you.
Lojong.
Yeah.
Program. Okay. So just a couple things. The corrections will be in your course basket. The password, I think it will also be in your course basket, but just so that the password in order to rewatch these teachings is 2-as-1. The number 2, but spelled out TWO dash hyphen. Sorry, I don't know the difference. Okay, TWO hyphen AS hyphen 1. ONE. All spelled, no numbers. But that will also be in your course basket, I believe. So for you to rewatch these teachings if you wish. And then just in case you're not on our mailing list or you missed the email that comes out on LOSAR on the 28th, there is a new mind training course, an online course that follows Rinpoche's book that has been put together, and it will be launching on New Year's. And if you're interested in that, even if you aren't on our mailing list, you'll see it on our website, and it will be available to everyone from here onwards, from LOSAR onwards. And so that's all the announcements. Lasso, we'll dedicate the merit.
Oh, sonamanda tamcha zikpanye tomni nyepe danan pamshi kirgananchi warlon tukpaye tsapin solin rowa dorwar cho kewa kondo yangta lama tang dharme chu Hwarla longcho jang satang lam ge yontan rabzo Dorjen changge gomban yurto ko jaguar huawu chirtar kembat Kunda zangpo teyang tepjen te teta kunke jitsa Daglo chir gewa data tamche raptor ngo Tusum chakpi gyarwa tamche ki ngowa kangla Chukdo ngakpa di dak gewi saw Dagun kyang zangpo zhoje Raptor ngowar ge in English.
Throughout all lifetimes, wherever I am born, may I attain the 7 qualities of the higher realms, and at birth may I meet with the Dharma and have the complete freedom to accomplish it accordingly. There may I serve a qualified Lama and day and night be immersed in the Dharma. Through realizing the teachings, may I accomplish the meaning of the heart essence, and in that very lifetime cross over the ocean of conditioned existence. At that point, may I teach the sacred Dharma within conditioned existence and tirelessly accomplish benefit for beings. May the great waves of impartial benefit to others bring everyone simultaneously to Buddhahood. Throughout our many lives and until this moment, whatever virtue we have accomplished, including the merit generated by this practice and all that we will ever attain, this we offer for the welfare of sentient beings. May sickness, war, famine, and suffering be decreased for every being, while their wisdom and compassion increase in this and every future life. May we clearly perceive all experiences to be as insubstantial as the dream fabric of the night, and instantly awaken to perceive the pure wisdom display phenomena. May we quickly attain enlightenment in order to work ceaselessly for the liberation of all sentient beings. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas all together, whatever kind of motivation you have, whatever kind of beneficial action, whatever kind of wishing prayers, whatever kind of omniscience, whatever kind of life accomplishment, whatever kind of benevolent power, and whatever kind of immense wisdom you have, then similarly we who have come in the same way to benefit beings pray to attain these qualities. At this very moment, for the peoples and the nations of the earth, may not even the names disease, famine, war, and suffering be heard. Rather, may their moral conduct, merit, wealth, and prosperity increase, and may supreme good fortune and well-being always arise for them. Kongri rawe korwe shingam sum pendang dewa manu jungwe ni chinri zingwang kunzing gyamsu yi shabi kargi bardu tengyur chi kongri tudu nganyir nima pan kado derji tengi gyatsab je guru penme tuju dulungi damba zingyong bawe wangchu ba Judo nanga gyalzen rui ku kanyi lodrö t'haye mingsimba Gini kutse tambara shunini Zomlin sanje tamba gyeze tso Penden shui ni chikpu Tamba yunring ni padang Tamba zimbe chibunam Kutse gyalzen tengyur chi Katog bashe karpa lindu Tramba t'haye gyalwe jinkun kyam Kyam nai gyawa kundong yermeji jedir trashi yurin tengyur chi.
Thank you. Everybody, good night and good morning. So happy to
Om Om